Welcome to another episode. What are you reading? What are you writing? A weekly video podcast features creatives, writers, and readers, and we come together to talk about books. I am your host, Karen E. Osborne, author of 4 novels and counting. I am so glad you're here. I think you're going to enjoy our next guest. So, I promised you an interesting guest, and I do have an interesting guest with a really interesting story and an amazing book. So, this is Dr. William Lynes, and we're going to just call him Bill. Hey, Bill.
Hey, Karen. Thank you for inviting me today.
Oh, I'm delighted to have you. So he has, first of all, he's the author of 9 novels. That always impresses me. I'm up to number 5. 9 is like, and his latest is called A Surgeon's Tale, and it's a sequel to A Surgeon's Knot. And Bill's going to tell us all about it. But I want to start before we dive into the book. I was visiting your website, Bill, bopping around just because I wanted to get to know you, before we
I
chatted.
appreciate that. Yes,
And I came across a page called Physician Burnout. And it really kind of rocked me when I
yes,
read it. So I wonder
yes.
if you could just tell us a little bit about that part of your life.
Well, it's sort of can be divided into two parts, I guess, my personal life and then also what it means to medicine. In terms of my personal life, I trained at Stanford University and finished my urology residency in 1987. And I practiced urology in Southern California until 2003. About midway in 1998 or so, I had two life-threatening catastrophic illnesses. Um, the first, I developed septic shock after going on a vacation to Mexico with my family, and I ended up in an intensive care unit for 6 weeks on a ventilator. I had a tracheostomy. I lost 40 pounds. I was deathly ill. But praise God, I survived. But about a year and a half later, I had a snowboarding accident and ended up in intensive care unit again with facial fractures and tracheostomy and a 40-pound weight loss. And so I was able to rehab from this and go back to the practice of urology, but I never was the same. After that, I entered what I call a downward spiral into darkness, where I had just a horrible problem with depression, just black, in some ways demonic presence, and bothered me really quite a bit to the point that I tried to commit suicide on 3 occasions. So my last suicide attempt was in 2003, and that's precipitated my retirement from medicine. In terms of physician burnout in the medical profession in general, it is an epidemic. Um, the the definition of burnout, it involves all professions, but it's more common in medicine. But it is a an overwhelming collapse, emotional and physical, associated with stress and overwork, in this case in the medical profession. And the incidence is alarming. Over 50% in nearly every survey, about 50% of all physicians have some sign or symptom of physician burnout. And over 1/3 of those in just beginning in their training have physician burnout symptoms or signs as well. But what's most alarming is this association with suicide. There are over 400 physician suicides in the United States per year. And that amounts to, basically, you can think of as one per day. And the number of suicide attempts is even more alarming, in that there's over 20,000 physician suicide attempts per year in the United States. And to put that into context, that is 2% of all physicians. So what I mean by that is every year, 2% of all physicians attempt suicide. And to me, that is just catastrophic. It's just overwhelming. It's hard to believe, but it's true. Um,
So you
Suicide
decided to
is
do something. So you decided, right, to do something about it through your writing or through your tell us about that.
right. Well, basically, I had after I retired from medicine, I was really struggled with my life, and but then in 2017, I had the opportunity to go to a physician writing seminar in Taos, New Mexico, where I met
Hmm.
another physician who had a similar story, and she encouraged me to write an essay and I wrote an essay. It's called The Last Day, and it was published in the Annals of Internal Medicine. And since that time, I've been speaking and advocating for physician burnout and suicide. And I've had a tremendous improvement in my outlook on life and my ability to function. So that's sort of my story as far as physician burnout goes.
Oh, God bless. And that you were helping others through your writing. And it sounds like your writing helped you too, right? It's
No question, no question. It was really the Holy Spirit that led me to this meeting. I'd never gone to a seminar, and this was a physician's writing seminar, and met this person who really changed my life. So I had been
yeah.
writing before that, but primarily fiction.
Ah, so you were already a fiction writer. And then you decided to go back to fiction. You were feeling better and you decided to go back to fiction.
Well, I had been writing for a long time. In 1990, in the middle of my practice, I started writing a book. My kids said that they wanted me to put them in a story, and so I wrote a fantasy adventure story, which eventually became titled "Pirates, Scoundrels, and Kings," and it was published. I self-published it in 2012, but it's my first novel, and then after that, all of my novels have been of medical genre.
Medical, so you write medical thrillers. So tell us about, I want to get the name right. I want to remember the name. Tell us about A Surgeon's Tale and what's the premise of the book and give us a little
Uh-huh.
sense of it.
Yeah. Well, I've written a number of medical thrillers, and I started this series. We call them at Blackwoods Writing. We call it Stories of a Surgeon's Life. And the first one was A Surgeon's Knot, and this one that came out in October is A Surgeon's Tale. Um, the premise is basically an examination of uh, two aspects of medicine. The first being that it's very difficult to become a physician, it's very difficult to practice medicine. And this is opposed to, though, the wonderful nobility of being a practicing physician. So that's sort of the premise. The story revolves around the protagonist. His name's Jackson Cooper. He is in the surgeon's knot an intern in a surgeon's tale. He's a resident in a urologic training program in Northern California in a mythical medical center called University Medical Center. And he experiences what you do in a surgical training program. Difficult long hours, interesting patients, interesting characters, colleagues, and so forth. And he has the unfortunate sort of negative aspect to his personality, and he's a narcotic addict. He begins using Percodan, which is an oral narcotic, and progresses eventually to using intravenous fentanyl. And in fact, in the end of Surgeon's Knot, he overdoses in the call room and has to be resuscitated by at that time, his girlfriend, Patrice. Summers. Um, so that's sort of the story. A Surgeon's Tale introduces a very interesting character named Maurice Litinsky, who is the figure on the cover, and he is a 37-year-old man who has HIV/AIDS and dementia from that, and he has recurring delusions of being Steve McQueen in The Great Escape, and if you've seen that movie, Steve
Yes.
McQueen is continually trying to escape from the Gulag, the Nazi prisoner of war camp. And in The Surgeon's Tale, Maurice Latinsky is continually trying to escape the hospital.
Mm.
So in the story, The Surgeon's Tale, Maurice Latinsky is treated with an experimental anti-AIDS drug, and it follows his course.
Wow, they both sound exciting, exciting, exciting books. I love that you talk about what a noble profession it is, but also how very, very hard it is to stay healthy and do it well. It's a really interesting perspective. Um, so are you working on anything now?
I'm actually writing two books at the present time, neither of which I seem to be able to finish. The first one is a sequel to a sequel. It's A Surgeon's Triumph, and it's a third in that series. And it's a story where Jackson is now a chief resident of urology, and his now wife, Patrice Summers Cooper, she doesn't like the hyphenation of her name, but Patrice Cooper, is pregnant, and she's a plastic surgeon, but she's pregnant in her third trimester, and she experiences a pregnancy related illness, which requires that she's in intensive care unit as a patient
Mm.
throughout throughout the novel. So the Surgeon's Triumph I'm working on, and then the second book is I started about maybe a month and a half ago, called The Old Doctor. This is not about Jackson Cooper. This is about a obviously an old physician who is a psychiatrist. He's 94 years old. His name is Elmer. I forgot the name there for a second. For Elmer Watley, and he's 94 years old and has been in practice for 64 years. So it's about his psychiatric practice and his family and some tragedies that occurred in his life.
Wow, these all sound good. Have you ever been tempted to go back and write the kind of books that your children wanted you to write? Are you ever tempted to go back and write middle grade or
Uh-huh. My wife is always talking to me about writing children's stories, but I think that my talent lies in writing about the medical profession. It
Mm.
just sort of I have so many stories and patients and interesting colleagues, and I've written so many of them that I really have not gone back. I do write short stories, and I have a number of short stories on my website. The ones that I'm most proud of are biblical short stories. Um, there are a couple about King David and about Lazarus and some other ones like that. So I do write that. And then the other thing I write is I write nonfiction concerning physician burnout and suicide.
Yes, yes, yeah. You are a complex man. Got a lot going on. So this show is what are you reading? What are you writing? So what do you get to read? Is there a book maybe or an author that really influenced your writing life?
Well, I started reading in college, actually, in preparation for going to medical school. People said, "Well, how do you get into medical school?" Well, one of the things is that people would be interested in what you were reading. So I started reading fiction, and I fell in love with it, and I have been since that time. Some of the authors that I have been very motivated or by our Charles Dickens. He's my favorite author.
Mm.
My favorite book of his is A Tale of Two Cities, and I just recently reread that. But I'm fascinated about authors who can create characters out of fictional, out of their mind. And I mean, if you think about it, Charles Dickens, some of his characters are really more than just a character. They're actually a noun in the English language, like Scrooge. We use the word a Scrooge character,
Hmm.
or you are Scrooge, or something like that. So I was fascinated by that, but I've enjoyed Charles Dickens. I've enjoyed Leo Tolstoy. War and Peace, and he wrote a number of medically related short stories that I've enjoyed. So I'm sort of into classics, and that's what I have been recently reading.
Yeah. Hey, so is there anything other than a classic that you've read recently that you could recommend?
I'm reading a book that's called Angel Dust, which is written by a friend of mine. His pen name is John Pascal, and it is a story about a young boy who is involved with Angel Dust, which is fentanyl, the street name of
Mm.
fentanyl. And
Mhm.
so I'm partway through that, and I'm reading that. I can recommend that to the point that I mean I haven't finished it yet, but I have read that. He's a friend of mine. We used to be in a Christian writing group together,
Help
and
each other.
so we read each other's works.
Yeah, isn't that one? Writing groups have helped me so much. Just having writing friends, what a difference it makes, isn't it? So
I've
how we
I've
support each
learned
other.
I've learned so much from a writing group. I really, really recommend them to people who are interested in writing either seriously or just as as a hobby. So yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So how can people, I got to explore your website, tell our audience how they can find your short stories, find you, where can they connect with you?
Um, my website is linesonline.com, which is Lyneson line, LINE.com. And it has, as you mentioned, short stories and my novels and my nonfiction writing, and a blog. It has a blog. So, and then in terms of social media, I am in X, Facebook, Instagram. My tag is at W Lines, LYNES MD, is how you can find me.
Excellent, excellent. So I know you all are going to follow Bill and check out his website and check out his social media. You're going to buy his book
Yes.
and, and write reviews because we're so appreciative of that. When you do get in touch with Bill, please tell him that you met him on what are you reading? What are you writing? Until next week, everybody, take care and thanks for watching.
Thank you.